Hello, everyone. Welcome to the OnlyFounders episode today. I'm so excited with our guest. We have Orly Zeewy with us today, and she is an author, a speaker, an educator, and a facilitator of the light bulb moments. I'm so excited to talk to her. If you know anything about my background, if you've been following the show, this is a woman who celebrates women at work. Not only does she guest lecture throughout universities, as well as she has a book, and she's working on her next book. Her first book is called Ready, Launch, Brand. And she also is guesting on many podcasts. You can hear all of her thoughts if you search her name, which we will definitely tag in the notes. And in addition to her consulting work, she is passionate about speaking. She wants to clarify the mess, which is definitely a person that I also enjoy keeping company with for that reason, because you have to clarify the mess and eliminate the noise in marketing messaging, brand messaging, especially. So Orly works a lot with entrepreneurs, and that is who we are talking with over the next hour. Hey, Matt, hi to you.
Hello.
And let's kick off the show.
Thanks so much for having me, and really looking forward to our conversation.
So what I really wanted to start with today with Orly is really talking about this next book that she's working on, because I think it's so important in the space that we're in, called Why Not Me? The Female Guide to Entrepreneurship. And I think it starts with a great question of why not me? So there are females entering the entrepreneurship space at a rapid rate. There's a lot of exiting with the women in the workforce that we've seen, not necessarily by choice, but because of the choices that are not available to them in the workplace that support being a woman elevating her career at work. And so I'm really fascinated by this conversation, especially the book, because why not me? Why not? The women thinking, I could run a business, I could start a business, I could do this the same, if not better. Why not work for myself? So, Orly, let's talk about your book. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about why you chose to write it, and what we can find in the book.
Well, first of all, thank you. And I think that there are a couple things are coming to mind. First of all, I wrote the book. I think I started writing the book when I was 8 years old. Because I grew up in,
right?
Yeah, sounds about right. And I grew up in Switzerland at a time where it was very paternalistic. And I had no female teachers. Girls were kind of second-class citizens. That has shifted, of course, but that's what it was like then. And I just remember, and I actually talk about this in the book, where there was a competition for first prize in our class, and I won that prize, but I had to share it with a boy because I was not allowed to have the prize on my own. And at that moment and I remember it so clearly, that at that moment I decided I was going to show them that women can do a lot. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to 2024 is when I started interviewing women. And I spent about 9 months interviewing them. And then between I'm trying to remember, I think, it's kind of getting fuzzy. I'm getting fuzzy about that. But what I discovered is that, and I spoke with 44 women founders across the country, parts of the world, across pretty much every industry. I had somebody who was a franchise owner, healthcare, arts, consulting, just all different kinds of backgrounds. And then the title actually came from one of my interviews. And the woman I was talking to, she's in Northern Ireland. And she said to me, Orly, I used to think, why me? Why me? And then one day I thought, why not me? It's like, where is that coming from? Where is this doubt coming from? And I
wanted to interject real quick. I love the title because it sounds very discussion based, which almost makes you think from a branding perspective that you're picking up this book in mid-thought, as if you were thinking to yourself the same thing. Why not me? Because you're thinking, why me? Why me? And then it answers the question. So go on. But I do love how the title is it sounds like it came from a discussion and also an interior monologue. So that's great.
And by the way, every woman I spoke with has that interior monologue. I'm not an expert. Me too, right? Yeah. So Every woman. I'm not an expert. What do I know? I've only been doing this for 20 years, like, hello, and the truth is that most men do not think that way. It's
Correct.
not, it's just not. And by the way, this is not an anti-man book at all, not at all. And in fact,
it never is, right?
Never
we always
is.
support men.
Right, of course, because we need allies. We can't do this alone, right? And I think what women bring is a different perspective in what business looks like. And one of the women I spoke with started a nonprofit. And here's the amazing thing. So she, she had a job. And then when she had a child, realized, and by the way, just to put this in perspective, more than half of the women I spoke to were moms. And the reason this is important is because, as far as I know, there are not any books out there that really talk about what does that look like to try to raise children while you're starting a business, while you're building a business. And even if you have a partner, the reality is that childcare falls primarily on the shoulders of the women, of the moms. And as a mom myself, someone who, I raised 2 children as a single mom, I went back to school, I got an MBA, and I wrote my first book. This is what every woman I talk to can do, all of those things and more. The woman I was talking to, who was from Northern Ireland, she started her business. She had a full-time job, okay? She had 3 children under the age of 9 and started her own business, okay? Now,
that's just crazy.
Well, you would think that, right?
I can't wait to read her story.
She's fabulous. And she is, and so now, she's now the top UK LinkedIn voice in the UK. She's met the king. She's been to 10 Downing Street. None of that would have happened if she had stayed in that, well, who am I? And it reminded me that when I was writing my first book, I was thinking the same thing. Well, who am I to write this lean marketing guide for startups? And then I remembered, well, hello, I come from generations of entrepreneurs. My father was an entrepreneur. I grew up with that mindset. I've worked with hundreds of founders. Why not me, right? Like, why not me? And also, is that even a question to ask? Like, shouldn't the question be, what do I want to share with the world, right?
I love that shift. Right. Orly, I was laughing, thinking to myself, just last year alone, as I've shifted more in the speaking space as well from just the entrepreneur space of running businesses, I asked myself several times, why me? Why me? God, why me? And I asked, and I just, and it took a while of asking that question, to be honest with you, after I've run companies for 12 years, had experience before that, have 3 kids, kind of the same thing that you're talking about. I very much agree with you. I have had this voice in my head as recent as last month, right? Like, why me? Why am I? And I keep smacking myself upside the head. And I'm like,
exactly.
What are you even talking about? Why not you?
Exactly. Right? And also, isn't the goal, and this is, I quote Marianne Williamson. I know if you know that quote about, our job is to shine our light. It's not to hide our gifts, because whatever your gift is, the world needs it. And so shifting the mindset of, this little voice in our heads that's constantly saying, wait a second, but are you good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I whatever? And every woman, I mean, this is the other thing that we as women do. It's not enough that you have, like, I have 2 undergraduate degrees and an MBA, right? And it's like, I talk to these women, they have like 2 PhDs and they're getting certifications. Why? Just do it, right? Just do the thing. Because this is the other piece, right? Which is perfection is the enemy of good. This is what I hear from women all the time. Like, oh, we have to be perfect. We have to be, no, you don't. And in fact, that thinking is what stops us from actually doing the, or doing the work that we're supposed to be doing.
Very much so. I actually just filmed a reel on this. I was so excited because I had another yet coaching opportunity. Coaches love, when you go to new networking rooms and you say, hey, I'm new to this, or I'm newer to this speaking business, or I'm newer to this space, or I'm writing my first book, right? You say first or new in any networking room, and it's like sharks, like all the coaches that have been doing it forever. They're like, oh, I got to talk to you because I've been running my speaking business for 40 years. Have you talked to someone that's done that? I have 5 books. Have you done? And I'm just like, ah. And so I literally, before I just did a reel, I was like, do not let coaching stall the doing. Because as women, we think we're constantly trying to perfect and evolve and find our brand and and it's like, you know what I say? Fuck it. Stop. Like, stop educating yourselves. Seriously, stop over coaching yourself. Stop getting advice. Stop stalling in the planning and the perfecting and the message, and just do it. And when I guest lecture, that's one of my main messages. All the students, they're like, what is your advice to us? I'm like, just fucking do it. Excuse the French. We're just going to roll with that. Like, that's what I tell every young mind. Cause I'm like, you are stuck in like, teach me, educate me, form me. You know, you are brilliant. Like, everything that you have here, you have your gifts. Send it.
I think a lot of people get scared. They get scared to do it. There's a fear factor of failing, right? So that's the biggest hurdle. Is it's not that they don't want to do it; they don't want to disappoint. They don't want to fear. And
failure is the backbone of entrepreneurship. Because if you don't fail, you don't grow. And in fact, in my first book, I have an example on. I have a whole chapter on calling your baby ugly, and this is. And I tell the story of I'm sure nobody knows this, so I'm be very surprised if you know this, but do you know what bubble wrap was originally intended for?
No.
You're gonna really laugh at this. So 1950s US, wallpaper is the rage. And these two men, an engineer, I think, I forget the other one. One was Swiss and one was American. They came up with this great idea of textured wallpaper. Okay, they try selling that to designers, interior designers, who just look at this and they're like, "You are out of your mind," right? I mean, can you imagine? I actually found a picture of bubble wrap over on a living room wall, and you think like 3 children under the age of 10 in a room full of bubble wrap, right? The mind reels at the thought of this. So what happened was everybody told them, you got an ugly baby, right? And what they did is, instead of going, oh, well, never mind, well, we blew it, we failed, right? They failed in that market. So what they did is they then went on, started doing research to find because it is a really amazing invention. And they looked at gardening and, all kinds of different applications until they got to where it ended up, which is, it's become so ubiquitous that we just call it, bubble wrap now is like, that's just the term for this, right? And it's hugely successful. I think they just were bought by another company for several billions of dollars. I mean, and imagine if they had just said, we failed. Oh, well. And I think that part of what I'm hoping this book will show women is, first of all, failure is just part of the job. And the way that we know whether something works or not, we try it out. And we don't that's where MVPs, in the language of startups, minimum viable product. It's like, just try it out. Just see if this is even something before you invest. Because part of the problem with that perfection paradigm is you invest so much time and resources, and then guess what? Nobody buys it. So that's not a good thing, right? You want to really think about making sure you understand, is there a market for what I'm doing? Is there a need? Will people actually pay for it? That's the big thing. Because people will tell you, oh, I love this, but will they actually pay for it?
Would you consider it failure, though, if people actually like it? They don't pay for it, but it's not necessarily, would you consider that failure?
I don't understand. You'd have to give me the context.
Okay, because there's a lot of situations where I've experienced where it's really easy to make a bad baby, like something that no one likes. But then there's things that I just want to make sure it's an ugly baby, which is very different. There's no such thing as a bad baby, but the ugly part is what's important. So just wanted to clarify that. Oh, just so like I understand, like what would be like a key difference there? Like, because like ugly, I guess in this way would be like cosmetic. Cosmetically, it's not sound, right?
Right. Because in the world of entrepreneurship, if it's an ugly baby, it means it did not serve a purpose. It does not mean that the idea was bad. It just means that it didn't find the right target market.
Okay.
The right application. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not bad. Bubble wrap was not bad. It was a sound idea. It was actually a brilliant invention, but it was an ugly baby in the context of interior design.
Right. No, I was just thinking like, yeah, you're 100% right. Where you can have your idea needs to match the audience. Where a lot of folks that come in is like, you come up with the idea, people like it, but then you have the problem of monetization. So it's a good idea. It's a great baby.
Oh, but you're saying it's not converting? Like they're liking it, but they're not buying it?
A lot of my history before I had this company was like that, ignoring consulting and stuff, but just products before ChipBot. Come up with a great product, but pricing it didn't match the market. People loved it, but we just couldn't make money off of it. And that's a different problem. And that happens actually quite often. And this goes into what you're mentioning. It's like, everyone has a great idea, but then is it failure if you can't monetize it?
I'm sorry. Everyone does not have a great idea. There are a lot of people who do have great ideas, and they're called entrepreneurs and inventors.
And then there's everyone else.
Exactly. Because you could, and a great idea is only a great idea if you actually move forward with it. So having it just be in your head, it's just a concept, but it doesn't, And then, but from an entrepreneurship perspective, the idea has to become commoditized into a product or a service that someone will want. But the reason that it works is because you're solving a real problem for a real person. And part of my work, part of my focus in that fuzzy to clear is to clarify what is the problem and how does your solution solve that problem better, more effectively, more seamlessly, in whatever way, right? And whether it's a product or a service, if you don't know that, then you're just a solution looking for a problem.
Interesting. So, Matt, what did you do in that example when it was liked and it was favored, but it wasn't selling? Was it just a pricing issue?
No, a lot of the time is you pivot to like an adjacent audience, oftentimes. So we knew it was a great idea. Like we were like, the audience says we got enough feedback and sentiment, but they weren't willing to pay for it. So we were just trying to find people who would pay for it. And that was, not every company went through that. My first two companies, you just dissolve it. It was like, okay, it didn't work out. Try again. Mm-hmm. But the last two my current company and the last product company, we generally found the audience. Pricing wasn't right. People weren't buying it. So we had to adjust the offering and the price just a little bit, and then position it differently. It's just like small tweaks. So like each point was a failure from a business end. But we knew it wasn't a failure from an idea end. We knew it wasn't because there's positive sentiment. And I'm an optimist. So I look at these things and I'm like, okay, there is hope here. I am for sure going to make money. I don't know how yet, but there's traction. And once I find the traction, I know how to go from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8. And then that's the kind of like each part is a failure point, right? Each time you try to scale, you fail. It's kind of a little bit of one step backward, 2 steps forward.
Right.
But eventually, then it's like, okay, if you look at the history, this is a success, but it was a lot of series of failures. And that's where I was really coming from. It's like, there's a lot of, an idea in business, if it doesn't make money, a lot of folks, well, not a lot of folks, but my opinion would be, it's still not a good idea, but for others, it could be a good idea.
I think we need to separate the idea and the response to the idea. Mm-hmm. And so you have a market, right? And part of, I would say that a big problem that I see with entrepreneurs is they don't do enough market research. Mm. And in fact, one of the founders I interviewed for Ready Launch Brand, they literally came up with this product, they marketed, they spent years and lots of money on it. And they ended up closing the company because it turned out it was a great product, the wrong market, and it never took off because they were trying to sell it to the wrong people. So it's not just not understanding the market, but not understanding who's the decision maker and who is the entry point into selling that product. So
Right.
a big piece of entrepreneurship is you really need to spend the time to figure out who is your actual target market and is there a need for that.
This is all bringing up a concept I just wanted to share that hits more on the emotional side and the human side of entrepreneurship, which is I feel like man or woman, there is so much connective tissue between your idea and what you're founding the business to sell, product or service wise, and your self-worth and your intelligence as a business human, a business founder, right? A person. And I want to say, what I hear from both of you when we're talking about this, it's wonderful. And I feel the same way. We're getting curious about when something fails, and we're welcoming failure because we've all been entrepreneurs in this room for years, Orly, decades. So when we're talking about that piece alone, that's I don't want to overlook that on this discussion because it's so profound that I want our listeners to hear this loud and clear. Your self-worth as a founder, as an entrepreneur and a business owner on the product or service that you are creating to sell to the market, when you fail, when you have a pricing mismatch, when you have a buyer mismatch, that is not reflecting your genius and your creative invention. That is simply welcomed as feedback. And so the more and the sooner as an entrepreneur that you can get to that point of separating my self-worth as a founder is not resulting in the product and service failing. That is welcomed feedback that we want to take in and get curious about it and start testing and asking questions and pivoting. And I would dare say that your response to every failure that you encounter and how aggressively you pivot and move forward from that failure and feedback is what makes you a good entrepreneur and a good founder. And there are people, I agree with this, that are not made to be entrepreneurs. Not everybody has a good idea, right? And that's okay. If the world were all entrepreneurs, we'd have a problem because we don't have the group of people that love working in these corporate structures and businesses to do other work, right? So I think that's a crucial point here to say that when you see something failing, celebrate it. Great. Like, this is awesome feedback so that we can pivot and we can shift from there.
And right? I think there's one, and I love what you just said, but I think the other part of this is that the sooner you do it, the better. Because I think where people get in trouble is where they kind of get locked into something they came up with, they love it, they think it's great, and they think that if they just push through, somehow it will be successful. And there are a lot of stories, that illustrate this. And the problem with that is you can't let your personal pride, get in the way of, is this a real solution that solves a real problem for real people who are willing to pay real money for it? Because if the answer is no on any one of those, you have to look at it more closely and see where can I adjust. And I mean, I've got so many stories I could share with you, but the point is that when we get stuck in that, oh my God, I failed, then it keeps us from saying, but where could this be successful? Where could this work? It doesn't mean that like you said, it's not a personal failure. It just means that there was a disconnect between what you put out there and the response, but it does not negate, to Matt's point, it's still a good idea. It just needs to find the right place.
And I would say from this whole thought process that female founders, perhaps, this is just an assumption, are struggling more with this than the male founder.
I have a whole chapter on that.
I bet you do, because the female founder is tying herself. Let's just take example. This woman has been at home with children for 2 decades. She has been primary caretaker. She has worked maybe a job, maybe no job. Maybe she's primary house, home caretaker, which is a full-time 2.5 jobs. But she has been working in the home. And then she has this idea. She's an empty nester. Her kids are off in school and in the world. And she's now entering this founder marketplace in midlife. And she is finding her voice and finding her ideation and finding all of these things, while also at the same time building her own credibility for her self-worth and her confidence, that she feels she has to be in the business world in a different way to have value versus all this value she's provided at home and raising children. That's a whole other topic. So you're talking about this female mind that's now saying, well, I have this amazing business idea and I'm going to go start it, right? Because why not me? And then like slammed with like no's and no, you know, she goes to get funding and it's a no. And, you know, and she's going to go pitch it and it's a no. You know, that kind of resilience and grit, it's putting reps in, right? It takes time for any founder, but especially for those female founders who your book is for. It's talking about these as wins. And that takes a whole other reframing of the mind that is, I'm still working through it. I've been a founder for 12 years and also raised children. And I'd say I'm still struggling, even having put the reps in and tried and pivoted. Even my second company, Tend to Launch, I went through the same thing. We've been a year open and I entered the marketplace in an unaligned place. And I got feedback. It's just not, it wasn't working. So now we've pivoted and I'm pivoting, but now I'm at the point where the interest is so high, but the converting and they're paying money for it hasn't hit. So I'm still in that place and I'm kind of like, I just want to give up. I'm like, no, it's a brilliant invention. It's just not working. But as a female, my inner voice is already garbage. So I'm working on that too. So the grit of like putting in the reps to continue testing and changing and pivoting rapidly, what we're talking about, the more support. And this leads me to my next question, because I'm so curious. As a female founder, she's just out there putting in the reps. She's pivoting. She's learning. She's taking feedback. She has her company, her idea. Where are some of the best places that she can be fed and get support? Orly, where do you go as a female founder to get fed and get support and constant uplifting and positive feedback in this war of founder life, of pivoting and being told no? How do you continue to strengthen your grit and your resilience?
Well, it's funny you say that because I know you had mentioned coaching. I actually have gone to coaches. And in fact, if you want to change your mindset, you need a coach. And I'm not necessarily even a business coach. I mean, there are the coaches who just focus on money, because money is a huge stumbling block for women. We're not taught about money. In our family of origin, it's almost like it's just not a topic that you hear anything about. And then, of course, we're not invested in at the rate that men are, even though the statistics, the data literally shows that if you invest the same amount of money in a female-owned company as you do in a male-owned company, you will get a 30% higher return on your investment. So, wow. Talking to other women, I think having, maybe a sort of a mini advisory board. I know people think of boards only for nonprofits, but for women, having, people they can talk to. I just joined a group and it's exactly that. It's because part of what we as women need, we need to constantly be reminded, you're okay, you're doing fine. This is part of right? I mean, we all need this, of course, but I think for women, there's a couple things. One of the things also, I did some little bit of research in brain science, and it turns out that the female brain is slightly more empathic than male brains. What that translates to is that women are always thinking about the well-being of someone else, whether it's your children, your spouse, your partner, your neighbor, whatever, or your client. And the problem with that is if we get too invested in helping others, we forget that the first person we have to take care of is ourselves. It's that if you're in a plane, the parent puts their oxygen mask on themselves first. And I heard this over and over again, right? This idea, and that gets tied into money and how much we charge and why we tend to undercharge. Men charge high and they settle for a price they can live with. women charge lower, and they lower their price to a price they think someone will pay. It is a crazy, crazy approach to revenue. I mean, no, that what you charge is not based on if they can't pay, then they're not your client.
Right.
Right? If you want to help people, and I hear this a lot, I heard this from just about every woman I talk to, this wanting to give back. It's not just about making money. And I agree with that, because I also feel very much, I mean, I've been a mentor in several, organizations. I'm a mentor now at Founder Institute. I love giving back, but that does not translate into lowering my price. And somehow, what is it? I'm like magically figure out how much you're willing to pay. Like if somebody says I have no money, I'm like, okay, well, this is my price.
This reminds me, I got some advice years ago when I was working on my pricing model, and they said, Anne, your budget is not someone else's. So even though I was a small business and I was growing my agency, I kept my pricing small because of what I thought I would pay. Because also, I know the inner workings. I know how the sausage is made. So I'm like, well, this doesn't take me that long. They're like, yeah, that's because you've been doing it for like 15 years, you idiot. Like this is going to take them, a year to do what you can do in a week. Would you stop? And I'm like, oh, and like, that's what's called paying for excellence. Hello.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh,
which is why the first step is you have to clarify, embrace, and stand in your zone of genius. Just because it comes easily to you does not mean it has no value.
Yes.
And that's something, I can't tell you how many women I heard this from. It's like, well, who am I? Right, back to that, who am I? But the problem with all of that is nobody starts out being an expert. You become an expert by failing, rebounding, learning, trying something new, getting feedback from other people. I think one of the other pieces, which is, it's an interesting aspect of entrepreneurship, is how isolated people can be. And that's why you really need to have people you can reach out to. So, now it's like we're on a Slack channel and I can ask any question and not feel like it's a stupid question, right? It's a safe space. We're just literally just trying to help each other, because part of what I've also learned both from my own work and teaching entrepreneurship to women is that women do best when they are in a collaborative environment, where they feel that by supporting others, they're getting support while they're supporting. It's a win-win, right? It's the whole idea that this is why we build communities. We're really good at this. And we're also really good at networking. And yet we're somehow afraid to go ask somebody. And the truth is, when was the last time you asked somebody for their advice and they didn't want to give it to you? Who doesn't want to give their advice, right? So, and
this is such a beautiful way. I think this brings us to a great closing point today for this episode of talking about, no matter who you are in founder life, being confident in asking peers for advice. Also, allowing yourself to show up in these communities of founders and innovators and inventors without any stupid question. Because, as Orly said, none of us start as an expert. And when we get into decades of our craft and we feel, wow, should I really be charging that? Yes, you should. Everyone who's a founder, men and women, you should be. You should be charging what the market is demanding, regardless of how long it takes you to do it. Because you have crafted not only your ability to do that work, but the ins and outs of testing it, right? Failing. So the big bow on this one, and this is a great discussion today for so many founders. I'm glad all these nuggets got out there. It feels very supportive. You should fail. Celebrate your failures. Mm-hmm. And share those failures in all of your communities and your networks, because you're going to help someone else. And there's never been a point where asking for advice and sharing advice wasn't also self-serving, right? It's a win-win. Share failures, ask for failures. So great conversation today. Orly, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Wonderful chat.
One last thing, last thing, Orly. Where can we find you?
Right.
I want to know, tell our audience where we can find you, where we can buy the next book,
Good point.
When you're releasing.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. No. So zeewybrands.com. That's my website. You can find Ready Launch Brand on Amazon. Literally, just put in my name. You can find me on YouTube. I run a monthly webinar called the Clarity Hour, which I promote on my website. And also, and please follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn. So luckily, there's only one Orly Zeewy on the internet, as far as I know. So it's actually pretty easy to find me, which, it's funny. Yeah. But yes, so LinkedIn, YouTube, my website, and then hopefully, some of your viewers might want to check out this Clarity Hour, because I unpack a lot of this within that hour. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Orly. Thanks, Matt. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Orly.
Thanks, man.
Take care.